I'm Greg Duggan. I'm the deputy manager for the town of Essex and village of Essex Junction. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming tonight. A couple of quick shout outs. Thank you for Town Meeting Television for being here on short notice and helping us with the hybrid setup so we can have people in the room here and at home. Thanks to Tammy Getchell, who's hiding over in the corner, the assistant to the manager, who put all this room together and get everything ready. There's some refreshments over there, some cookies, and get the room ready and allowed us to do this hybrid option on short notice. So thanks to the two of them for that. I'm just going to kick off, give a brief little overview of what. Turn it over to Jen Nauer to facilitate the meeting. Just a quick reminder, if anybody's attending at home, if you could please mute your microphones until you're asked to speak or called on to speak, that would be great. Thank you. So this is the first of 3 public forums that we're holding about the future of Essex and how to prepare the town of Essex for the village of Essex Junction's coming vote and subsequent Vermont legislature decision on the creation of an independent city of Essex Junction. The forums are going to be focused on the interim phase around the village's independence separation effort. You can see on the chart over there that Tammy put together, there's a little timeline. The interim phase, we're defining it as the time from now until when the legislature makes a decision on the
And
village
actually,
becoming an
Greg, sorry to
independent city.
interrupt. Folks at home actually can't see that. Do we have that on a PDF?
Oh, yes, I should share my screen.
I know you're doing
Also,
multiple things now.
if you are attending virtually, please turn your camera off until you and if you want to speak, turn your camera back on, and then when you're done speaking, back off. Thank you.
And actually, I'm going to ask Town Meeting Television. I had it set up on my computer, but not this one. Would you be able to just pan to the screen for a bit, and then I will be able to pull it up for when we're chatting later on. Thank you. So just to repeat, we're looking at the interim phase. That's the focus of the forum tonight, Friday, and later on this month. Again, that's defined as basically the period from now until when the legislature makes a decision on the creation of an independent city of Essex Junction. The select board is looking to use the feedback it gets from these forums in the coming weeks and months to help them make decisions to best serve the entire community without favoring one group or another. The point of the forums is to talk about and discuss what people are paying attention to during this interim phase and to hear from our residents and the public about what people value about Essex in this interim phase. I'm going to share a few options from the staff perspective, which are also up on the wall here. And then we absolutely want to hear from residents on those and anything else that is not listed. We've heard about representation. We've heard people really valuing childcare. Just a few things we've heard, and certainly I don't want to limit it to that. So anything that's on your mind tonight about this interim phase, we want to hear it. From the staff perspective, we are really focused on providing municipal services and figuring out how to pay for them. It's going to be especially important in this interim phase as we get into the budget season, which is just around the corner, and figuring out how to put our budgets together to keep providing municipal services to the entire community. Couple of examples. I'll just do a real quick rundown of what's up there. Staff. We have staff that are shared between the town and the village, and they're paid for between the town and the village. As we get into the budget season, we could look at ways to reallocate those costs, moving the staff into the town budget. It's a way so that everybody in the community pays equally for that shared staff. It also sets the town budget up to better prepare to absorb that cost if the village does separate and the town loses some of its tax base, because we're going to need that staff no matter what. Similar concept around public safety, specifically fire. Could look at paying for fire across the entire community, again, so that everyone is paying for the cost of fire services in the community. And again, if the village separates, the town to be a little bit better prepared to absorb the cost of providing fire and the remaining portion of the town. Capital budgeting is another one. Could take a look at the capital plan, capital budget, see if funds could be allocated differently across the entire community for projects, capital projects. And as far as for paying those services, regardless of the outcome of the village vote, we need to figure out how to pay for our services. If there's a reduction of services, that's a reduction of cost. There's a way to save money there. Not necessarily the recommended one, but it is an option. There's always the option of raising property taxes, which is how we get the bulk of our revenue. Also looking at local options tax is an opportunity or an option to raise a 1% tax on sales from businesses in the community. And or there's the option to raise fees, such as your recreation fees, your pool fees, stuff like that. So with that, I will wrap it up. I'll do my best to answer any questions that come up. Unified Manager Evan Teach is here as well. But mostly we want to hear from you. So with that, I will give it to Jen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Nauer. It's nice to see you here. So there are about 16 people that I can see on, or more than 16 people online, 20 something people online, and let's see, not quite a dozen folks in the room. So that's a good crowd. Nice to see you. I do want to reset a little bit because that was such a sprint full of really dense information. And so I'm guessing that you might want to know how I've set up this next 60 minutes or so, 70 minutes, and then we'll open up the floor for questions and conversation. So the overall idea is to spend some time giving some information that Greg just gave an overview of and getting a chance to ask questions if you have them about any of that content, and also hearing perspectives. My full expectation is that this conversation is going to go in all kinds of ways. There's a lot of ground to cover. And so one of the constructs that I'm going to use to try to keep it somewhat simple is keep coming back to this interim phase. And if we can get the camera back on the graph that's colored with the yellow on one side and then the blue on the other, again, those phases are defined by specific votes rather than actual dates. So right now we're looking at that yellow phase. You might go anywhere with your comments, but at some point you can expect me to say, what are you paying attention to right now? What are you wanting the select board to pay attention to right now? And those are some of the notes that I'm going to be taking. You'll see the notes because I'll share them on the screen so you can see what I'm writing. And rather than having a series of consecutive speeches, I actually might interrupt and try to ask you questions so I can figure out if I'm writing down what you wanted me to be tracking. Because that's the only way I'm going to know if I have an accurate sense of what you're trying to say. That's true for folks who are at home as well. All right, so last but not least, we'll be toggling back and forth between online and in-person participants. It looks like right now everyone is fitting pretty comfortably in the room, but there is some overflow space in the lobby if we need it. There's a microphone set up at the table so that your voice can be easily heard from folks online and in here. And we'll go back and forth, I think, just depending on the volume of where people have their hands raised and to give a little bit of space to the microphone in between speakers. Are there any questions about the agenda so far? Okay. So
Jen, I have
yes.
a hand up from Gabrielle Smith.
Go ahead, Gabrielle.
Hi, I'd love to see the graph you're talking about. We only see online the interim phase allocating the cost of municipal services.
Yep, we need to move over.
I think there's something over there that we can't see.
I am pulling it up right now,
Great.
and I'll share my screen.
Thank you so much.
It'll be much clearer on the shared screen.
There it is. Thanks.
And Jen, one last thing. We are only using the chat for people to be raising their hands. We will not be using the chat for commentary. We ask you not to do that. Only if there's something going wrong with your feed or something you can't hear, but not for commentary. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Greg. That's really helpful to have that up there. Looks like we can see your whole screen. There you go. All right, are there any questions about any of the content that Greg had presented at the start of the meeting? And I'm only starting there because as you heard that volume of information, if you had questions, I didn't want you to be sitting on them for too long. So far, so good. All right, so I think what I'd like to do is open the floor then to hear what perspectives you have and what you're thinking about with this interim phase. What are you paying attention to? Another way to think about that is what are you worried about or hoping for? The floor is open for comments. And it looks like there's one online, so we'll take that first, and then a show of hands in the room can let me know how to queue up the rest of the comments. Go ahead online.
I'm assuming that means me. Sorry, you didn't call my name, so.
I don't have all the names so clearly in front of me, I'm
Okay,
afraid. But
okay,
yes, go right.
that's fine.
Is this Ray?
Uh, It's Ray Garofano. Thank you for this forum and the opportunity to kind of provide some feedback about what's happening with the separation and the failed merger. I am a town resident. I've been here since 2009, and my daughter is 11, is entering middle school in Essex. And when she was young, we uh, completely depended on the after school and the Parks and Rec opportunities that were provided by the community. And one of the best things that happened to us is when the Parks and Rec departments merged, because that just simplified our lives as far as looking for options for summer care and after school care. So I'm really concerned about young families coming to Vermont. And, we've seen a boom in the last several years about people wanting to move here. And I want Essex to remain a desirable place. And I think young families look for childcare, after school opportunities, and enrichment opportunities that I think the EJRP provides. I'm also concerned about our tax base and losing that as a town resident. I understand there's shared services. I don't know all the details of those shared services, but kind of back to my point of attracting people to move to Essex, I think, if our taxes go way up in Essex town, that will make us less desirable, and we might lose some people moving here to other nearby towns. I also, I voted for the merger. I think not only forget about the financial aspects of like having one community. I just think having one community helps the community thrive. And I was disappointed that the merger didn't happen. So I'm concerned about, what the next phase is and how it will impact me and my family and other families that might be moving to Essex that have young children.
Mm-hmm. And when you think about the concern you have about the next phase, is that tied to the things like childcare and the way services are either experienced or paid for, or is that something else that you're talking about?
I think availability is affordable childcare, affordable after school options, and availability when you're a town resident. I don't want Essex Junction programs to be like, I don't want to compete for those programs like I have to compete for like Colchester or South Burlington or other nearby towns.
Yep. Okay, got it. I think I've got it. You can see, Ray, if as I type, I've been trying to type up what you were thinking and saying. And this is an open invitation to anyone as I do my best to track your thoughts. If you see something that I've written that seems really off, tell me.
No, I think you captured it. Thank you so much.
Any comments in the room? And then we'll go back to comments online. Can we up the volume on the speaker in the back? That's a technical question, and I think we can. Oh, it's the stream. You mean like, can we turn up the volume for folks who are calling in? I don't know. That's a question about the microphone volume versus
it's coming from here. If we do it over there, it creates a weird echo feedback. So let me try to pump the volume up here. See if that helps.
Now let's take a comment online. We'll see if it made a difference, because I don't see any in the room in any case. Greg, the next person who's up.
Next up is Rachel Lazat.
Rachel.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
You can.
Okay, I'm going to go away from the lawnmower for a second.
Seems like my back too. Go ahead.
Okay. So I guess my top separation concerns at this point, just like what Ray had to say, is services. And I wanted to say that, especially Parks and Recreation, we've utilized camps since the summer of 2016 when my daughter was entering kindergarten. And that experience for us solidified Essex. The availability, the price, meeting friends for her before entering Essex Elementary. And I mean, it's for families, it's childcare. that availability of childcare. And we've also utilized the vacation camps and the after school program. And the after school program really is what I want to focus on. This is huge. The availability of this care enables me to work, period. And for me, it's affordable, it's on school grounds, it's licensed, organized. And for my daughter, it solidifies her friendships, it gives her outside time, sun or snow, and tech free activities after school. The town outside the village families do not need another what if when it comes to childcare and after school care. The why left abruptly, and Essex Junction Recreation and Parks maintained services for us. We don't know if the Y would ever come back to provide care or any other childcare agency. They left other outpost locations as well, is my understanding. And camps and childcare are really hard to staff right now. We've seen camps have to close and not be able to take as many kids this year. And a what if for childcare means what if for working young families? What if work? And what if work is a huge stress for families. And when Greg talks about what our options are after a failed merger for the town outside the village, it's either cutting services, raising fees and taxes, and both of those things affect families with school-aged children. And the other part that Jen that you talked about was concerns, and I am going to shift gears a bit, and I am deeply concerned about the actions of certain town outside the village citizens. During the merger, a campaign was launched with signs flooding the town. Vote no on the merger tax hike. This was not only misleading, but it led town outside the village voters to vote that the alternative the alternative separation was that it didn't exist, and B, it wouldn't allow for a tax increase. But here we are with a failed merger, and we are looking at the potential of a tax increase. And this is what worries me about this town. And it worries me that the town that we love so much has come to this, and that people were misled by this campaign. And I don't want that to happen again during this potential separation. I think communication needs to be clearer and more concise.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to do my best to try to say, I've got, I think, some of your aftercare and childcare option concerns listed here.
Mm-hmm.
About the tax increase, needing reliable information about what's likely. But you're also talking, I think, about a concern of how discourse happens or getting good information. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, I definitely think that that's correct. There were a lot of people in the town outside the village that relied on this misinformation, and it's been perpetuated for years. And honestly, I think not only do people feed into it, but also it helps to tune people out. People don't want to listen to the drama surrounding this issue anymore. And that's a big problem, because if separation happens, the town outside the village really has some tough choices. And it's a shame.
Mm-hmm. Are you able to see the screen, Rachel, and see if I'm writing? So
Let's see.
The concern about how discourse takes place regarding this issue is something you're paying attention to during the interim, specifically how to get accurate information and then how to stay engaging. Just your concern that drama disengages and people won't get informed about what the options are.
Yeah, that's a really great way to boil it down. Thank you for helping me make it more concise.
Yep. Any comments in the room? Yeah, please.
So thank you very much for allowing us to attend this forums. I am a town of Essex resident. I live in the village area. So my point of view as a resident in the
Could you
village.
just lean into the microphone a little bit better so people
So my point of view as a resident within the village area is when I see increased property taxes, all red flags go up saying, well, my property taxes have been way too high for way too long. I have been living here since 1994. I have seen a couple failed mergers, and now that's it. I moved into the village of Essex Junction because I could not afford the town of Essex. I was lucky IBM was here. IBM left and left everybody stranded. And it was a struggle very often for us. I am now at a point where I quit my job last year. My husband is about a year from retirement. We just cannot afford higher property taxes. At the same time, I have many friends who live in the town outside the village area. And I remember those days when I had kids. It's never easy. It will impact seniors as well. Because no matter what we do money-wise, seniors just don't have that much money. It's a fixed income. We raise anything, it'll be more difficult for everybody. Both parents with families and seniors with a limited income. Another thing is that we want to keep both the village and the town areas that are attracting newcomers. They are very nice places to live with lots of future opportunities. And as I said, we don't want to leave our friends in Essex stranded, you know. At the same time, we have to manage things very, very carefully. I think a local option tax is an easier way to do things. It can raise quite a bit of money. At the same time, I see that there's a lot of very big, very expensive houses in some areas of Essex. I got my bike a little bit and I ride around. And I can see some people are way paying not enough taxes over there. They may not have as many services, but that's a choice. So I don't know what the answer is. All I know is maybe raising the fees is an option. Pool and recreation, not so much. Development, maybe, but we don't want to lose some of the developers either, because that will impact Essex Town a lot. Because they're the ones who have the room to develop. And it will impact also if we want to have affordable housing. So there's a lot of things we need to take into account. I don't know what the answers are. What I'm saying is both sides have an issue. Basically, the point of view of residents who live in the village is, what's in it for me? Because that was the question with the merger. I find that the merger, everything was transparent, but there were lots of misleading comments on behalf of a few wealthy people. And a few people who call themselves journalists, but are not. And I think I'll leave it at that.
So there's so much there. Before you leave, let me see if I've got some of it at least.
Yep.
Okay. And you might even have some questions. I don't know if there's any answers or clarifications on the different tax options, but you're very concerned about property taxes going up, meaning that it's very difficult for everybody. And part of what you're trying to figure out is who's advocating for affordable housing, residents with fixed income in particular, and who's driving sort of the, I'll just say who's advocating. That sounds Biddy's points of view. Did you have any questions about any of the tax options?
Yeah, and another option I'd like to see put there is what's good in there for the village, who has been paying extra taxes every single year.
So that's because I'm not as literate in some of these issues as all of you are. You'll have to help me understand how you'd like that captured here.
We've
Your
been
question
paying
is,
extra taxes.
Yeah.
And my question is, why would we have to pay more?
yeah, okay. Yes, did you have a clarification?
Jen, you're a village resident. You're in the village?
Yeah.
You want to?
Sure. So, as far as allocating the cost of municipal services up there, how that would affect village residents is using the fire department as an example. Right now, the village of Essex Junction has its fire department.
Yep.
It also pays into the town of Essex
Yep.
Fire Department. If both fire departments are paid for under the same budget, which is how
Yep.
the highway departments are paid for right now, that way everybody in the community is paying the cost of fire
Okay.
equitably.
So just
So
to
it
simplify, just a quick
equalizes.
question. I apologize for interrupting you, Greg. So quick question. I'm currently paying some taxes to Essex Town, to the village.
Mhm.
If you increase property taxes, am I going to pay to Essex Town and to the village as well, extra taxes? Or just to the portion for Essex Town?
I'll let Evan try to answer that one, and I can jump in and make sure I understand the question correctly.
He will
You are-
understand. He's a villager.
These are the tough questions because they deal with
Nitty-gritty.
taxation
Mm-hmm.
and how taxation is done through a tax rate. Okay, so bear with me. So you are paying as a resident of the town.
Yep.
You are paying for the goods and services that the town provides to you, and that creates a tax rate. And then everybody in the town, including members in the village, pay that tax rate.
Yep.
The people in the village also have a tax rate set by the village board
Yep.
for goods and services that the village board pays for.
Right.
And what we're saying is if you are currently paying for your fire department, you're also paying into the town fire department.
Right. So if the town fire department goes up,
Well,
are
So-
both my fire departments going
but
up?
if the town absorbs the village's cost,
Okay.
then that total cost the people at home may not see it goes up to the top line and then gets shared by all the residents, town, outside the village,
Okay.
and the village,
Right.
and it equalizes
Okay.
that service cost, just the cost of that service. So you are all paying one rate. It's the town rate.
Right.
And so the village tax will go down and the town tax goes up, but only slightly more because it's being paid for by
Okay, I get it.
more by the
Yeah, I
people.
get it.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very difficult
And
to.
if there are any like MIT math majors, if I got something wrong, I apologize.
No, it
Usually
makes sense.
Sarah
It makes
Macy
sense.
answers those questions.
Is that going to what you were wondering though?
Well, that's going to what I'm wondering. Say like staff cost municipal services can be the same thing. We have municipal services in the junction. We have municipal services in the town, and in the village we pay everybody. I mean, so how did it work for municipal services? Does it work the same way?
So this for the fire, which is a municipal.
No. I'm not talking about the fire. I'm talking about just like the village staff say.
So the staffing.
Because
I'll
you're
use our-
staffing in the village. So for instance, we have a planning development
Yep.
in the village and planning development in the town.
Sure. So it depends on the staff. Right now we have shared staff who are shared between the town and the village.
Yep.
Some are technically.
Well, how about the ones that aren't here?
some are some are,
that's what I
some are
wanna hear.
technically town employees.
Let them finish.
Some are technically town employees. Some are technically village employees.
Yep.
But the cost is borne by both. I'm going to use our HR director as an example.
Mhm.
He is a town employee.
Yep.
The town pays all of his benefits and about 70% of his salary.
Yep.
The village pays about 30% of his salary.
Okay.
So he is paid for both, but the village residents paying into town, the entire town portion, plus that 30% of his salary. is village residents.
So
You-
we're
if
paying
his
more.
entire salary was shifted into
Right.
the town, then everybody pays that 100% of his salary equitably. Everybody pays one.
So hang on. So in the interim phase, what would happen then? Go up by the 10 rate.
The town tax would go up to
Yep.
cover that additional cost.
Yeah.
The village rate could go down because the village would no longer be paying that portion of his tax through the village taxes. So it'd be
In the interim phase or in the final phase?
in the interim phase, and the final phase depends on what happens with separation and an independent city and
Right,
hiring
yeah.
of the staff and everything else. That's
Yeah.
beyond what we can speculate at this point.
So think of the interim phase as just that. It's an interim step. The vote is going to occur.
Mhm.
We have no known outcome. There's only two outcomes of a
Right.
vote, yes or no. The vote then goes to the state legislature where it becomes a bill
Mhm.
and they take up debate on the vote. The town has no say in that
Right.
particular
I get that.
avenue of that. That's just how things happen in the state of Vermont. So as an interim phase, the town select board is looking out. Just there's two outcomes. Well, there's two main outcomes and there's other outcomes. One is the state says, yeah, you can separate. And no, you can't.
Mhm.
But either way, as an interim, we're asking the citizens, what do you value? And in terms of a tax hike, if there is a tax increase at the end because they do get separation and take their tax base
Right.
with them for their own taxes, that interim phase, the town can do some things. It could be a year from now, it could be 3 years from now, it could be 5 years from now. But the way taxes work, if you move them incrementally or you do some of the items that everybody will bring up tonight, including sharing of police services, if you share a service and someone else pays you, that lowers your need to raise revenue for that department service. It's shared. And so those are the types of things in the interim phase the town could be looking at, the town could actually do. And when I say the town, I mean the town select board can actually do. And then afterwards, when you started to get into other colors, there are other options they could be looking at. And so for the people here in the audience and the people at home, that's what we're trying to get at. So when people say that they're concerned about recreation, so in the interim phase, the town select board could be sitting down with the village board and saying, this is what our citizens are concerned with. We think we should be able to work something out where those programs are protected. That's where we're going to put focus, et cetera, et cetera. I hope that makes sense.
Or as far as taxes go, what the value, what I'm hearing is that it's important for the select board to keep taxes from increasing at too fast of a rate. Is that really just
No, I get it. I mean, I mean, I get the intricacy of it. What I'm thinking is there are still some areas where it's not clear
There's still some areas
because I
where
don't
what?
think you can answer it directly. I mean, it's going to vary on. It's going to depend on so many things, basically.
Yeah,
You know?
there's many options.
But I
and-
mean, I'm
yeah.
not going to. I really want other people.
I know,
to
I
have a
absolutely
chance to,
understand. I
you
understand.
know?
But I think part of that conversation you've been having is probably on a lot of different people's minds, and the answer is not terribly satisfying because there are a lot of variables that are moving
Exactly.
around.
Yeah.
But what is coming out of it is there are a couple things that people want to take care of in this interim phase so that they know what to predict around when it comes to work, to livelihood, to where you live. And so,
Absolutely.
to that extent, hopefully I've captured at least some
Yeah,
of the...
and this will be important for everybody, including the village, because we don't want to lose people either. You know.
Right.
So-
Okay. Well,
And
thank
the interim
you.
phase is when the town and village are still together.
What's that?
The interim phase is when the town
No,
and
absolutely,
village are still together.
absolutely, it makes sense. And as I said, it's there's so many unknowns that it's hard to. Anyhow, I mean,
Thank you.
thank you for your patience.
No, thank you.
Thanks for the
Appreciate it.
explanations.
We're going to take a comment online and then we'll come back to comments in the house. And I think it is Sue Cook who's up next. So Sue, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, it sounds great.
Okay, great. So, for me, what is most important is that we are approaching this interim phase and what comes after in a collaborative and open discussion way. And from my perspective, what I've been aware of is that there has been things that have been kind of put together by the village trustees and taken to the select board and, in a way that it's like, this is what we are deciding, you need to respond to that. And that doesn't feel collaborative to me. If I think about the police department, which, we're both, the whole community currently is leveraging the police services. The suggestion that was made by the trustees was to, if there is a separation, that the village would pay based on grand list and the town outside the village would pay based on grand list. And that doesn't seem like a fair or equitable way to do it. I think grand list makes sense on some things, but it doesn't with the police department. I mean, the police department should be based on how are those services used and how are they being used and how does that split up based on the town inside the village and the town outside the village. And so I just, for me, what's most important and what I value most in this process is there really being a fair and equitable and open discussion between the leadership of what is the full town and the village. And if that means that we need to look at it being a discussion that's represented by not the current leaders, because the current leaders are too entrenched in the opinions and the history and not able to see really what is fair and equitable, then maybe that's the way we need to go. But we need to be looking at what is the right thing for the entire community and not just who wins and who loses. And I feel like we're starting to look at a win and a lose kind of situation, and that's not a desirable outcome.
Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of work on that, Sue, so I can figure out how to take it. And I'm pushing kind of hard here, so you're going to have to let me know if I've missed the mark. I think what we're talking about is how to reframe the discussion so that there's a little bit more give and take. Collaborative is one of those funny words where people can say it but mean a lot of things with it. But how to reframe the discussion so that it is either maybe more open or inclusive, or give and take. Am I hitting the mark there, Sue?
Yeah, so it's actually so that it is an actual discussion versus a, hey, this is what we are requiring, you need to respond to that. You know, the reference to the town offices, which yes, are physically within the village, but are owned by the town, and the town put a lot of effort into recent, you know, energy and overall renovations of the property. You know, the proposal that was dropped for the select board to review is not a fair and equitable proposal. So I think it, you know, so maybe collaborative, it means too many different things to different people, but
At the moment,
it really
what you're saying is that the swapping of proposals is tricky to figure out how to get in there for input.
yeah, it feels like a negotiation, and a negotiation, there usually is a winner or a loser. And what we really need to look at is what is the right thing for the overall community in the interim and in the aftermath of that interim, so that both the town that remains and the village, if it's a separate thing, are successful, and you know, the residents feel good about their communities and feel like, you know, they didn't get the you know, the raw end of a deal, so to speak.
Yeah, right. Whatever this ends up with, you want to make sure that people have had their say and they understand what they're walking into. Are you able to see the screen to see how I've written this so far? At the moment, the swapping of proposals is leaving limited opportunity to explore options or consider options, and I'll just say as a community.
Yes, yeah, that's effective. Something you just said where, you know, people want to feel like they're able to walk into some, you know what they're walking into. But with the separation, that is purely going to be, my understanding, purely going to be a village decision.
Mm-hmm.
So town outside the village doesn't get a say in whether the village separates from us or not. And I understand the logistics of that. But we do need to have a say in terms of how does that separation occur so that it is, you know, reasonable, fair, and equitable for everyone in the best possible way. Understanding there's going to need to be compromise. There's going to need to be maybe some things that aren't, at the very top in terms of desirability, but everyone walks away with what they really need and want.
Okay. I'm going to leave it there, Sue, mostly because I don't know quite how to put it in a more pithy way.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Recognizing that because this is such it's a very complex negotiation. Negotiations come in all types, right? And so you're watching a lot of different moving parts. And part of what you're saying is, in order to stay abreast of what's happening, there needs to be more opportunity for exchanges all along the way. And now I'm going to take some comment from in-house, and then we'll go back to online in the back.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Moving up. There's a phone call.
You've got a phone caller?
I don't know, but they can't raise their hand.
Oh, I see. Yes, I will make an opportunity for that. Thanks so much, Evan.
May I take my mask off?
Yes, you may. Thank you.
My name is Jan Abbott, and I have lived in the town and the village for 58 years. I am as violently against separation as I have been strongly for merger, and have fought battles against separation and for merger since before some of the people in this room were born. Having said that, I find the interim phase very interesting, because I wonder if during the interim phase it has occurred to our wonderful staff here that if they reallocate salaries, and the select board, of course, if they reallocate salaries and benefits to be paid equally throughout the entire community, and they include the cost of the village fire department in the town of Essex budget, and they more equitably distribute capital dollars throughout the entire community, perhaps the legislature is going to say, you no longer have a problem. No. This I devoutly hope will happen, and I also understand why everyone is acting as though we are going to have a separation vote in November. However, every battle we have fought on this for the last half century, people have opted for status quo. And I devoutly hope that will happen. I want Indian Brook to continue to be my park. I want the town to continue to be my town. But I just present this, and I ask Evan and Greg, has that ever flitted through your mind that the if all those nice things happened, that the legislature might decide that we didn't need to separate?
I'm going to be as honest as I can.
Good.
I have no idea what a state legislator will or will not vote on and what makes them say yes or no.
But do you think that it might, if the select board did all those things, do you think it might make the village's cause a little bit less strong, shall we say?
Here, I'm going to step in for just a second, because I don't know, unless you have more to add specifically.
You jump in and then I'll see.
Here's what I'm going to, the reason that's such a tricky question to answer, not from content, but just as somebody who looks at negotiations a lot, is that the town select board right now needs to represent village and town equally. And if there are enough village voters who have said they'd like to pursue and develop proposals for separation, then it puts the town in a strange spot of making decisions not to favor or disenfranchise any one group or another. And so allowing that proposal to sort of, those to develop and to get explored.
But doing all these things is...
So in the meantime, there are...
So let me be clear. We're not proposing even the suggestion of these things as a tactic one way or the other for the state legislature. We're doing it because it is something that, from a budgetary and taxation standpoint, if you're looking out into the near-term future, we don't control the state legislature's outcome at all. Let's be clear.
Yeah, I know. But
we don't. They may take the town's testimony to town select board. They may not. They may, for whatever reason, They might like some things in the proposal and not like other things. That's where we are at. But there are some taxation budgetary items that staff can envision that in the interim phase, if it leads to separation, it places the remainder of the town in a better position for the future. And if separation doesn't happen, it places in the town, the remainder of the town and the entire town, at no worse than it was before, and even better because now they've equitably shared those services that which provide protection for the entire community, such as police, such as fire, such as bus service, such as I'm missing something, Essex Rescue, the ambulance service. Nobody is losing any service. But the amount of money somebody pays is then at the top line equitably paid by every resident.
Oh yeah, I
who's in.
understand it.
So I'm saying this for homes. So I hope that helps you, and my learned colleague wants to
I'll make
jump
two
in.
really quick points and then move on. Really double down and emphasize we do not know what the legislature is going to do.
Well, we don't. Nobody.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I'm not suggesting that you know what they're
Yeah,
going to
so-
do. I'm
so-
merely suggesting this might,
Yeah.
if you do all these things, the village's case kind of disappears.
And my
which
second
is fine
point,
with me.
my second point is that if you do all that in 1 year, that's a lot of money. I don't suspect the select board or the town is gonna make all those changes within 1 year. There are options to consider. Part of why we're here tonight and later on in these forums is to just how do these things look? What's the reaction people have to these? To get some feedback on do any of these sit well, not sit well, and what other ideas are out there. So with that, I'll
Thank you so much.
And thank you for coming tonight, and thanks for your comment.
You wanted somebody from the village who's against separation, right?
no, we
You're all town residents.
There are a lot of perspectives on this. So I'm going to go back to online, and Evan tells me that if you're on the phone, only on the phone and not logged in, then you might not be able to raise your hand. So I'm going to just make a little break in the action here. Is there a phone participant who had a comment to make? And if not, I'm going to go to the next online person, and that would be Patty.
Yes, hi. I want to speak because I loved what Sue Cook had to say. She previously was on the Essex Town Select Board, and I really valued her input during the years she was there. And it was years ago, a few years ago, not many, not 50, but I guess I've always felt since we've moved here, and that's when Sue was on the board, that the select board, I'm not select board, I felt the select board is always driven by the timely efforts of either contract proposals or ideas, as Sue Cook said, of what we should do by the trustees. And I'm curious as to why. And after living here 4 more years, I realized that there are 5 trustees representing the area of the people that live in the village, which one of my best friends lives in the village. So I love my village people. And I have a few clients in the village. So I have some good people. But also the town, even though the town select board has to represent the village and the town, to me, I mean, this is sort of an out of a box idea from what Sue has said, that I believe if we had 5 people, residents of the town outside the village, representing neighborhoods, what have you, just to sit at the table, just that live outside the town, outside the village, meet with the 5 trustees, okay, and then somehow have the town outside the village people and the village people pick another 4 people that represent everybody, and then have these discussions. Because I feel just like what Sue Cook said, even when she was on the board, she noticed, because I read back to 2017 notes at the town office, that there were things even before they had a governance committee for the merger before that all got started. It was happening then that the trustees were bringing up negotiation topics, saying we're going to present these sentences and these ideas, and people can talk about them because we have an outline. Why can't we in the town outside the village come out with an outline? That is my question.
Okay.
And I want that to be documented. And the other thing I want to say is one of my clients in the town told me today, 2.5 years ago, that his neighborhood in the town outside the village, again, for the third time, got a whole list of people. There's a lot of elderly people. I hear people talking from the village about young people, and I think that's great. We have a lot of bikers and stuff in the town outside the village that bike to school, into public safety. But older people, I'm 60, so I consider myself not that bad, but there's 70 and up. A lot of us can't even come out of their house to walk on the sidewalks because even if our taxes were raised, go ahead and raise them. We want our sidewalks plowed. And they're tired of waiting. My client said for 25 years they've been in their neighborhood trying to get the town to do, and I think it's because we just don't have equal representation.
Okay.
To me, that's the root of the problem.
Patty, let me see if I've got it, okay? So
Sure.
there's going to be some elements that I don't, but what I do have nailed down, I believe, is this concern about representation and how to ensure that town outside the village residents' views are fully represented or considered. The concern is that there's overrepresentation of village views, which might be driving considerations.
Yes,
Accurate to you?
right on, nail on the head.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
And I'm only asking due to time. I'm trying to get a sense of how many people are sitting on comments so that I can figure out how to allocate time for our remaining meeting. So just a quick show of hands, and then we'll go to someone in the room. How many people here have comments that they? Okay, so at least 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. And how many people online, if you can raise your hand at least briefly, have comments? So, so far we have about 10 comments to go through, and I don't want to cut anyone short, but I do, in the interest of making sure that everyone gets their views out there. I am going to start to interrupt a little bit quicker if I think I've got the gist, and I hope that's not too insulting. And the sense is I'm going to try to grab the gist of what you're saying, see if you have other things to add, see if I've got it accurately, and then move on to the next. All right, thank you. Let's move to somebody in the room, and then we'll go back to online. Any comments from the room? Yes, go ahead. In the back.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
The dotted line.
In the interim phase, you mean? The dotted line in the interim phase?
The dotted line represents the vote. And you're asking us to tell you about things that will happen after the vote.
Actually, I'm asking well,
assuming the vote is yes.
Not quite. That's not quite what I'm asking, but what are you wondering or concerned about?
Just wanted to point out that that's a difficult area to talk about because it's so conditional. So I heard some concern about childcare, and I think that is a valid concern, even though I have no children. I think that currently the village provides childcare at no net cost to the taxpayers, apparently. I think that if we separate, the select board needs to prepare to either trade for those services, and I've heard interest in Indian Brook Reservoir season passes, and I haven't heard much in the way of offers.
Can you put your a little bit closer to the mic? Yep. Thanks.
Yep. Thank you. So mostly I've been hearing mostly demands and no offers, and I think that's probably part of the problem. So clearly we have a possibility right there. Childcare in exchange for season passes. The way to sort of work through things. And that's the kind of negotiations that I would expect our select board and our trustees to be doing. Not simply saying, we need this, 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 and this. I want to point out that in 1994, taxes in the village, you combine town, school, all property taxes were actually lower than they were outside the village.
So Ken, I'm gonna I'm so sorry. I think part of it is I'm losing the thread a little bit. So I have your concern about what happens if to these kinds of services, if separation happens, and your question is, are people thinking about those
The
possibilities?
select board needs to prepare to either provide those services, and we have a great model to follow. Apparently, it costs no net because the fees pay for the service. So it shouldn't be very difficult for the town to gear up
Okay.
and follow the model that the village is using. I would point out that the village services currently don't accommodate all the needs, all the demand. There is a waiting list, a prioritized waiting list, I might add. That would end.
And by when you say that would end, that your concern is that then town outside the village wouldn't be on those wait lists anymore?
The town outside the village would be the town, the new town of Essex, with its own Parks and Recreation department, which it has, and it would provide child care because the citizens need it and want it. And if they don't want to provide it, there is an opportunity here, I would think, because express concern, interest in access to Indian Brook Reservoir has been given and
Okay.
stated pretty strongly, actually. So I think there's a great opportunity there.
So Ken, I'm a little worried that I'm going to miss some of these things because they're so specific. They're ideas that
I
could
thought
happen.
specific was good.
Well, so I'm not getting the specific pieces. What I am trying to grab is what kinds of questions do you have right now, or what do you want? What are you hoping that the select board is paying
want the
attention
select
to
board.
during this interim phase? And
Yep.
I think I've got that you want to make sure they're preparing for what happens if separation takes place.
Well, that's the whole idea, right?
Well, that's one of the ideas. Yes, there's a lot of work
Well,
to be
if
done.
it doesn't succeed, I think that some kind of equalization mechanism needs to be put in place.
Okay.
There's no question about it. And one was created in 1917. The town outside the village highway tax took care of that very problem. And what did we do? We phased it out and turned it to zero. It was a great way to deal with the discrepancy with the village paying for road maintenance in the village and road maintenance outside the village. That's simply not fair. And that can be extended to other services as well.
Okay.
There's one very, very important concept, because when we're leading up to the legislative decision, there's an interesting dilemma. If you think about it, the village is a municipality corporation with taxing authority over a geographic area, the same geographic area that the town has taxing authority over. Will the legislature simply say, it's fine, take a portion of the tax base from one entity and go with it? This is going to be an interesting dilemma for the legislature. In fact, in Massachusetts, in a split like this, the village was required to pay the town because the town was losing tax base, not by a choice of its own.
So here's what I'm going to try to, and this is,
I'll say one more thing and I'm done.
yeah. Well, no, I'm not actually trying to speed you up. I'm trying to say this, these speculations are all over the map. And I think part of what you're trying to figure out is,
I think because of that fact,
yes.
the village needs to be in a more negotiating stance.
Okay.
Instead of a more demanding stance. I think there's a lot of uncertainty as to what will happen. And I think that
Yes.
if the town was blessing it because there was more negotiation going on, I think you'd have a lot better chance of flying. But I think the current approach doesn't work. And I think that there'll be resistance. And I think that the concept that the state will allow part of one entity's tax base to simply be given to another without the say of one.
So one of the things you're anticipating or looking forward to with interest in some way is, what is the conversation by the time it comes to the Vermont legislature? What kinds of questions do they ask?
It would be good
and
if
how
we
are
went
they
in
going to weigh that?
with a unified
Yep.
approach would make a huge difference.
Okay.
I think that's everything. Childcare, 1994. In general, the select board needs to preserve the integrity of the town. We should not surrender anything. We should trade. We have a long-standing relationship with lots of things each value.
So Ken, I am going to move on to another comment because the time is
Yep,
going to
I'm
be
done.
starting really
Thank
tight.
you very much.
This last piece, let me just see if I've got it. Is there a unified approach in leading up to the Vermont legislative decision? I'm going to list as a question here to capture part of what you've just said. I'm hoping
would
that
make a big difference and make it.
I'm
more
hoping that honors
help.
it. Right. Okay. It would make a big difference in sort of keeping the unity of.
It would increase the probability of success.
Thank you so much. And I'm sorry for that abrupt. Let's take a comment online, please.
Raj Chawla is next.
Hey, thanks. I wasn't going to comment, but I felt like some fact checking was in order. So I'm going to comment as a trustee. I was listening while mowing the lawn, so pardon the assumptions
Cutting out a little bit, I'm afraid. We can only hear a couple of
that the
words.
there have been a lot of assumptions.
Raj, do you want to turn off your camera? Maybe it'll come through a little better.
How about this?
Let's
Is
try.
that better?
Sounds good.
So there have been a lot of comments that the trustees are making demands of the select board. I just wanted to set the record straight for just a quick second because I know time is tight. The trustees responded to a request by Select Board Chair Andy Watts to provide an opening suggestions on what the village was thinking about how to proceed with separation, specifically what we were interested in talking about and how we felt about each topic. Excuse me. I'm paraphrasing my understanding of the process we were in. So we did just that on fairly short notice, I might add. So we provided the select board with our thoughts, and we gave them those thoughts in a priority order so that they would understand that this is the level of importance we assign to each one. And the first and most important to us was how to share police services. And so there are 11 or 12 in there, and they're numbered, and they're not demands. They are simply responses to a request for what's important to the board and what we think is important to village residents as we move forward through this process. It may seem like there's no negotiating going on, and that is because most of this has to happen in open session of meetings, and we can't simply do this in back rooms. Had we done this in back rooms, we would be having a different conversation right now, which would be haranguing us rightly for doing just that. So we are anxiously awaiting to hear back from the select board so that we can work together as we usually do to come to some kind of equitable, thoughtful, creative solutions to move this community and these two communities forward. So I just wanted to kind of jump in and say to those listening at home and those in the room that the trustees aren't making demands. We are trying to work with the select board in a process and a venue that is incredibly difficult to work in. Public open meetings. I honestly, I can't think of a more difficult place to try to work this out. So please be patient with the select board. Please be patient with the trustees. We're doing our best. We're going to do this as openly as we possibly can. And I really do hope that, I had hoped that we would have heard from them by now. I think they wanted this process to play out, and that's fine. But so late August, we're hoping to have some kind of response from them. So please understand that trustees aren't making demands, and we're not trying to hold anything over their heads. And I think that's important. Thank you.
Any comments in the room? Yes.
Can I take this off?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, my name is Diane Clemens. Okay. Well, that's part of the reason why I took the mask
It
off.
always surprises me too.
I speak very softly, so regardless. So I second the comment on Rachel Lazat about getting childcare for a variety of people, whatever circumstances. It helps our general public. My concern is services. Okay, as I'm riding down Route 15 in Pearl Street and I'm looking at the guardrails, which are hidden behind the weeds, I'm wondering about other things, like people, of course, mentioned about sidewalks. Well, sidewalks are important, not only in the summertime, but wintertime when everybody's trying to walk or ice skate or whatever on the sidewalks to get to school and work, as more people are finding that walking is preferred or at this point in time more cost effective since they're working from home. But my other concern is as a justice of the peace, okay, as this interim period here, okay, I got elected by the entire town, not just, as a village resident, I got, I didn't get voted by just them. I got voted by everybody, just like the select board. In fact, I was probably at the same time as the select board. So how does this interim period affect people like me who provide those necessary services to the greater community? And it could be dealing with an assessment. It could be all these other fun things that we do that are critically important to the public. How do we operate going forward? When it comes to like setting up town meeting and running the elections and all the other stuff that are important for our community for us to go.
I want you to be able to finish all your comments and with Jen, and then I'll answer your question as best I can quickly.
You have a question for that?
No, I have an answer for her.
Oh, well, there we go.
Do you want the answer now, or do you want to finish your comments?
My last comment is it's time to start painting the lines and the crosswalks again. So because as an older person, if somebody talked about the older person, I'm finding a hard time finding the sides of the roads, if not the center of the road, because I can't see those darn faded lines. Okay, so yes, I have earned the gray hair. So, but I'm interested in your comment.
Okay. So to get just wonky for a moment, thank you everybody for the use of the term wonky. Travis, wherever you are. No changes occur until the effective date established by the legislature. So just for the sake of argument, you have a vote in November. The state legislature gets it sometime December, January. They debate it, and they say, sure, we'll let you do something effective July 1st, 2024. Nothing happens, taxation-wise, office-wise, etc., except for who gets elected during those times. Nothing changes. You'll still be a JP till the end of your term. And if you get reelected, you'll get elected for whatever period of time until the effective date of your term of the state legislature. And then the village, which becomes a city, will have to do elections. And the town, who may then have vacancies, will have to have elections.
Because the way this is going is that should things happen July 1st, my term doesn't end for another 7 months. So I would be servicing the town that I'm not
right. And
in?
so that's an item that needs to be addressed by the state legislature.
Okay. Well, I don't want to leave you guys hanging. I mean, you voted me in.
Who else?
But on the other hand, who's going to do the job?
So I think
who else will tell me that the lines are faded?
So I think I'm gonna put that in the
lines are faded.
So in that sort of teal section of the transition, that's one of the questions that lands squarely there, right, in terms of terms and people's obligations when they've taken on a role.
And I know I'm not the only person that's in this. We have a lot of people who are indeed on boards and commissions that are serving across the village line.
But it's a good suggestion. As the village is drafting its charter, it could put in the charter that those JPs and others who are from the village get to keep their office until past the effective date until the next election.
Well, we would. In years past, they used to be on 3 BCAs because there was a school.
Let's not get into wonky details.
That's a wonky detail. I thought we were only down to 1, but I used to have 3 meetings.
Thank you so much. And let's take a comment online.
Joshua Knox is next up.
Yes, hello. I'll keep my video off just so the audio will come through a little better. If you want to really see me, you can. So I want to tag back to something Rachel and Patty both raised, because I think it lies beneath things like taxes and services. That is, how we make decisions collectively is important. Although I don't speak for anyone other than myself tonight, you may already know that I'm on the Planning Commission. So I have a great interest in things like governance, demographics, development. So as concerned merger at the time, I thought it was great, still think it's great that the issue of representation was raised in the past few years, but the solutions put forward assumed a unified TOV perspective that warranted at-large representation. We know that's not true, and it will get us into trouble in the interim phase as well as separation if we believe it to be true. Just quickly, for example, if we imagine the separation going through, we in the current TOV will quickly find ourselves as a town of like 11 or 12,000, seventh or eighth largest in the state still, with the majority of that population residing in a smaller portion of the land area, surrounded by a largely rural area. So what we're going to end up doing then is recreate the sort of circumstances that first led to the creation of village government in the 1890s. So what I would close with is just saying the current TOV is not a monolith, and any governance going forward cannot assume that it is.
Okay.
That's all I got.
I think so. I picked up two pieces there. I'm going to take the last one that you just said. Current TOV is not monolithic.
Yeah.
So representation needs to take this into account. And then you also talked about TOV residents' views, just the concern that it might not be fully represented during the interim phase.
What I was saying specifically is sort of how the TOV as a unity isn't something that could really be represented, because when you say someone from the TOV, you could mean someone in the Essex town center in apartments, like a walk away from services, or you could mean someone up on Brigham Hill. And so to imply those are the same thing, it never made sense to me.
Yep. How can if you might be able to give me a phrase that can make this really specific in these notes, because I don't know if I'm going to get that nuance here. Can you see it on your screen, what I've written?
I can.
What would you add that would make it a little more specific?
I'm looking at the bottom one. Current TV is not monolithic.
Yep.
I think what I would say is it can't be like representation can't be at large is really what I'm saying, because the big issue that kept being raised, and I think in a sense rightly so, is that everyone is elected town-wide, but there are very different areas of the town as it currently stands. And so there was a proposal. I don't want to go too wonky, as we said, but one of the proposals that was sort of mooted was this idea of ward government, when we were thinking about one of the possible merger options was, what do you think of ward government?
Yep.
And I'm not saying necessarily let's do that tomorrow, but being open to those kinds of things, or once again, we will be still as far as Vermont goes, a large and diverse town.
Yep.
I hope that clears it up a little. That was wordier than you wanted.
No, it's not wordier than I wanted. I hope I got it. It's mostly
Yeah.
these notes to be as useful as possible, and as if it becomes a book, no one reads them. But if they're so spare that there's no life in them and you don't know what you're talking about, that's not helpful either. So thanks for the time.
Yep.
Okay, let's take a comment in the room, if there are any left. Anyone else? Yes, please.
Thank you, Irene Renner. I wanted to follow up on some of the comments that Patty Davis made. Is this audible for people in the room?
Yes, sounds good.
The select board does need to have another group of people with standing in the room as they talk about separation agreement with the trustees. As we all know, the trustees are there to represent the village only. They continue to represent, make demands, set priorities, and negotiate on behalf of town inside the village residents only. We do need a group of 5 people appointed by the select board immediately to have standing at the meetings at which separation is discussed. And to Joshua Knox's point just now, I would welcome that, what I call New Town of Essex Advisory Committee, to be made up of people from across the new town of Essex. I would certainly hope we'd have a rural resident or 2, along with someone from a dense area such as the new town center, as well as a couple of people from the suburbs. The select board could interview these folks and set up an ad hoc committee as it has set up many ad hoc committees before. There would be no staff requirements aside from posting the agenda and posting the minutes. This committee could be very self-supporting, as is one of the committees I'm on right now at Town Hall. We don't have staff show up. We send our own things into the IT department to post. And so, knowing how overworked staff is, I really would hope that you would take us up on doing something like this, because it would be very easy for the new Town of Essex Advisory Committee to meet an hour or 90 minutes before a select board meeting, so there's no opening up a room on a separate evening. It would all just flow.
So here's what I've got. What options could be set up for the interim phase for this representation to inform planning? Example, an advisory committee, including folks from dense areas, suburbs, rural, etc. Does that get at what you're talking about?
Yes, please call it the new Town of Essex Advisory Committee, so we are clear that it is town outside the village only residents who are there to directly provide the other voices that have been missing for years in the room each time the trustees meet with the townwide representatives who are known as the select board members.
So I've got outside the village only residents.
Yes. As to another comment that I heard, I would like the select board to remember this is being done in back rooms. The trustees for many months, even before the second merger vote, perhaps even before the first merger vote, the trustees were meeting in executive session with their attorney to talk about what would happen if merger didn't pass. So there have been executive sessions upon executive sessions, and I want the select board to be cognizant of that. The select board itself has only recently been going into executive session about these topics.
I'm trying to figure out where to put that. I think one of the things that you're paying attention to is the number of meetings that happen in executive session.
The number of minutes, maybe, but I mean, the meetings happen, and then the executive session happens after the meetings. But
yeah,
but there's a lot of negotiation or a lot of discussion. Thank you, discussion, Paula, happening in executive session. So to say it's not happening in back rooms, I think, is disingenuous. I also just heard a comment that it couldn't be more difficult than this. And I would beg to differ. If you bring in 5 town outside their village residents to sit in the room with trustees and the select board, it will be more difficult and your outcomes will be much better, because unlike the 3 years that merger has been discussed and the town outside the village had no standing in those rooms and in those meetings, this would provide a voice to the 11,000 people who have been without that voice. It will make the negotiations harder, better, and it will actually make an outcome that perhaps will pass a majority of voters rather than fail.
So my words are not going to be as passionate as yours, but here's what I've got. Paying attention to the number of executive sessions that are happening. It's confusing and tricky to follow developments, maybe missing input.
But the fact I don't know if you captured that negotiations become more comprehensive when you have half the town that has not been represented all of a sudden being represented, because now you have a give and take in front of the select board rather than just half the town having their ear.
I'll just add a footnote and sort of attention to representation again.
Equitable.
Yeah. Okay.
And my final comment is just what we're talking about now mirrors a proposal made by a public member 2 years ago. He suggested a plan called Separate and Share. It was brilliant then. It's what we're doing now. And all of the quote drama around merger was completely unnecessary. So I would urge elected officials and staff to listen hard to what the public has to say, whether it's in a forum like this or at a regular meeting or just an email that you get. The public has wisdom because they're a step back from what the select board has to process every time they go to a meeting. And the public can often see a bigger picture, and there can be some real brilliance there. And I'm sorry that we've spent 2 years and $100,000 going down a path that some folks saw a long time ago was just a repeat of past unfortunate patterns.
So some of that comment might not be something I can fully capture, but I am trying to figure out how to take a little bit of it.
Okay, thanks.
This part about you're concerned about how the discourse is happening now. I'm sort of lumping it in that category.
Mhm.
And there are a couple details already about how to ensure accurate information and how to stay engaging, sort of the concern that the drama disengages. You quoted a very specific resource, and I'm happy just to put a bullet here with it, but I don't remember the name of it.
Separate and share.
Thank you. Separate and share.
.com. It's a website. It's all there. It's still relevant 2 years later.
Okay, great.
Thanks so much.
I am preparing to move on. Are you all set?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks, Jen.
How about a comment online, please?
Margaret S. I believe it's Margaret Smith.
Hi, I'm not gonna turn on my camera because my hair still hasn't recovered from COVID.
It's okay.
But I do have can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Sounds great.
Okay. As far as someone in an earlier comment said that the rec departments have merged, they have not merged. They are merely cohabitating. And there's some confusion there because I think that the village rec department thought they could run things, and they tried to kick the Essex players out of Memorial Hall, where they have been for over 50 years, in order to make it a space for daycare, and it would take major renovations to make it even closely suitable for daycare. But in any case, and the other thing is that while IBM was paying into the village coffers for their schools, the village had the opportunity to spend money on things like sidewalk plowing and daycare and crossing guards. And so they voted for all of those things. And then when IBM stopped paying, their taxes started going up. So for a long time, the village taxes were much lower than the town taxes, and that all shifted when IBM pulled out of the merger. So, you know, it's kind of sad to see them complaining about higher taxes, but they voted for all of those taxes. And
so, Margaret, I might be missing part of the thread here. What is it that do you have something that you're paying attention to in the interim phase that you want to make sure I'm capturing?
Equal representation is really important.
Okay, and part of that goes to what you were just speaking about, which is there's different views of sort of how decisions were made in the village or the town, and what level of service is, the different areas might make different choices about that. And so it comes down to representation for you.
Yes.
Okay. Was there something else?
No, I'm good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any comments in the room? Who hasn't spoken yet, just until I get through to everybody? Okay, we'll take another comment then from online.
Georgia Levine.
Hi, can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Hey, so I just wanted to take a quick second to reiterate what Rachel and Ray said, and I think Diane said it too. The thing that I'm thinking about and worried about is definitely childcare and parks and rec. So I wanted to add another voice to that. And then to also say that communication. I feel like communication is the other thing I would like to see the select board really work on. And I feel like they've overall it's gotten a lot better, but yeah, I'm focused on that too.
And when you say communication that you'd like the select board to work on, can you elaborate a little bit more on are you thinking about communication to the public?
I am thinking about communication to the public. I'm also thinking about collaboration with the trustees and transparency is kind of what Irene was talking about as well. Like there's a lot of stuff that happens in an executive session, and it would be great if we could see more, if we could see, the public could see more of what's going on, but mainly I was talking about communication with the public. Yeah.
Okay. You might be able to see what I'm typing on the screen.
Yep.
Representing your thoughts, communication with the public.
Yep.
Transparency.
Yes, transparency.
And you were seconding some of these pieces up at the top from retaining childcare and the park.
Yeah.
So I
Yep.
didn't have anything there. Okay.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments online?
Or phone? Harlan Smith and Erin Charbonneau just had her hand up and came back down. There it is. Harlan Smith is next.
I'm waiting for Jen to acknowledge me, or do I just go ahead?
You can you can just go right ahead. But thank you. What would you like to say?
So I'm going to go along with the communication thing as well, and I'm not even sure if this is even feasible. And I wasn't going to comment because Raj pretty much covered it. And Jen, I believe you do negotiations between people, or you're a moderator. And so here's my concern, and one of the things that the communication going out to the public is the thing that always concerns me, because there are so many avenues to get information out there, and anybody can put information out there, I guess, is my concern. So the public information network out there, social media, so on and so forth. And I keep hearing that the list that was presented to the select board as demands, and I feel like in a negotiation, somebody has to go first and says, well, this is what we would like. And then the other party has to come back and say, well, that's great, but it really doesn't work for us. But, and then we start to find that middle ground. And I keep hearing those coming up as demands. And I'm not sure if there's a way that the select board and the trustees, when that information starts going out, it was like, oh, this is a list of demands by the village, that both the boards can get together for communication and say, it's not a demand, it's a starting point for the negotiations. So my biggest thing, and the thing that I'm following the most, is how to get great, good, proper communications out there. I think even the most recent thing brought up about Memorial Hall and people being kicked out in childcare. I think that was the beginning of a negotiation where people had asked, could we do this because there's a childcare need and this facility might be able to do it. So I think the communications are happening, but the social media communication out there disturbs a lot of it, or sends it off track. And I'm not sure if there's any way for the select board and the trustees as one unit to bring it back on track to get that. So communications information is what I'm following mostly in this.
Okay, so I'm going to say you're concerned with how social media networks disrupts accurate exchanges. How to
And if there's a way to counter that, properly counter that, legally counter that.
Yep. Okay. I know counter is a funny word. It's the best verb I can come up with right now, but you're really trying to figure out how do you balance that. If there's inaccuracy out there, how do you balance it with a good stream of good information that signals accurately where people are?
Exactly. Yes. Thank you.
Any other comments in the room who haven't spoken yet? How about online?
Erin Charbonneau. I'm sorry for any mispronunciation.
Nope, you got that just right.
Awesome.
So I'm just here to plus one to all of the concerns with the rec department and childcare. My family has utilized that extensively, and I guess from where I'm standing, it seems like we gave up some of the things that we utilized, like the Y, as a town, and have come to rely more on EJRP to step up, whether that's, I'm not sure who made that decision or how it was made, but I have concerns that, okay, well, if separation happens and nobody wants to share that anymore, what's going to be left? Because that's just a huge component to any type of working family. And then I just also want to plus one on the comment that should separation happen, how we're still going to have all those same issues to deal with in terms of there's a rural part of the town outside of Essex and there's suburbia, and a lot of the things that like I want my sidewalks plowed. I live in the town outside the village. My kids, the walking districts that the school comes up with, they seem to constantly be expanding. And my kids are walking down the middle of the road. And, you know, how do we, how's that going to work if town, those are just the kind of things that I guess I'm concerned about.
Yeah,
So
that's looking at all those phases, interim and transition and long term, but really trying to anticipate what's the impact on services like sidewalks if separation goes through.
yes.
So, Jen, if I can
Yep.
interrupt for a second, just for everybody, since I was in the room, not to quote a book title, I was in the room with the school district when they informed us that the YMCA, because of COVID, was not likely to be able to provide the child care service that they had done before. Okay, we had no idea whether after COVID they were going to be able to do it or not. EJRP, a licensed child care provider, was able to work with the town to accept that. They have to work with the school district because nobody has the amount of space needed for the demand of childcare. Then, during COVID, all the other, not all of them, a lot of small providers have since gone out of business. So the demand for childcare services has gone up, not down, and the space is still finite. So when these things happen, as your local government and the child care provider to a lot of citizens, we were scrambling looking for all kinds of spaces that would work for child care, being one of the number one demands or needs of the citizens, especially during COVID. So if the YMCA is able to come back and go back into the school system as a licensed child care provider, that might be great, but they haven't been able to do that yet. And when we say license, it's a state license and a mandate. It doesn't scale up quickly, but it could go the other way quickly. And so those are just the things that for the people, that's how that occurred. It was not really the intent, but again, you're responsible for the result, not just the intent. But the YMCA said it's COVID. We can't get our people doing it. We're not going to go out into other facilities. Sorry. And EJRP was the only one and a trusted source to be able to provide that service. So
I'm going to say just around, it is related a bit, Evan, this bit about predictability and retaining childcare and after school, and just these are layers upon layers of different systems at play, but to know what the predictable spaces might be for the interim, transition, and long-term phase helps all those partners kind of click into. So I would just want to acknowledge that it's a few minutes past 8 o'clock, and I'm prepared to take the rest of the comments that are online, but also for those of you who have been sitting really patiently, stay with us if you can, and I understand if you have to depart. I'm going to say thank you for being here. How many more comments do we have online before we wrap up? Just a number I'm looking for. So show of hands. 2? So why don't we take those 2 comments and then we'll go to close. Who's up?
Emily Franz is next.
Emily?
Hi, yes, thank you. I just want to say that what I'm thinking about now in the interim is the culture of our community. A lot of the folks have already said things that are important to me, childcare, things like that. But as I was imploring my children to go to bed so I can speak at this meeting, I had to explain to my 7-year-old what it was about. And he really couldn't understand why separation is a thing. And it really broke my heart. I think that this conversation has gone on for so long and it's become basically tribal, rural versus suburban versus urban, which is really not urban compared to much of the our country. And it's just really sad that personalities have taken over and that we can't focus on why we have governments, and it's to meet everybody's needs, whether it be families with young children, seniors on a fixed income, people living in rural areas. And I really hope during this interim period that we can think about the culture and our ethics of taking care of every single person in this community. And, you know, I definitely voted for merger. I think it was what was in the best interest of everyone. We're at a place where I completely understand and value why the village wants to separate. And if we can do this, thinking about what's culturally best for everybody, what our values are, what our ethics are, and really just remember that the purpose of governments isn't to fight about who gets represented the most, because if we do that, no one gets represented. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Emily. Here's what I have from that piece is the culture. How do we take care of every single person in this community during the interim and beyond? And what are our collective values and ethics?
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. That's exactly what I wanted to say.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to take a minute just to finish this phrase. How does our government reflect our community and vice versa? And I think we have one more comment online.
I see Mike Sullivan. I also see somebody on a phone with their microphone unmuted. So maybe we can jump to the phone before we forget them, just in case.
Sure, the
that person
phone
wants to speak.
participant. You have the last 4 digits.
540-5080.
Hi, I thought I am muted on my end. Thank you.
So is that a signal? Would you like to speak, or are you all set?
No, I'm sorry. I'm just listening at this point. Thank you.
So we have one more online
In that
comment
case,
then.
it's Mike Sullivan. Mike Sullivan.
Yeah, hi, Greg. Thank you. First, I want to say thank you to the moderator. She's awesome. And I also want to tell Evan that he should always be in the room, regardless. And I only want to just add my comment to Harlan's communication from the select board to the trustees is the most important thing in my list right now. Thank you.
Mike, people are going to start believing that I'm tipping you.
So I'm going to just add communication between.
Well, you are.
Communication between the boards is the most important thing right now. And even if it's not the specifics, you're looking for signals that that's taking place. Are you all set?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Have we gotten?
I am.
Have we gotten to hear from everybody who had a comment to share tonight? Have you gotten to speak yet? No? Oh, please.
Well, I added some words for some people who are speaking.
Okay. This will be our last comment of the evening. No pressure.
When I looked at some of the requests, we'll call them, from the trustees, I thought they looked like demands. So they might want to be careful about who they have word their recommendations to. The thing that really isn't, I don't think, related to this, but one of the things that most upset me in some of the results, some of the plans that had come forward, was that the recommended organization for governance, particularly in planning and zoning, as it was presented ultimately, was very different from what the focus group had come up with. And I think you need to take a look at that.
So this is a specific issue. I don't know if you can help.
It had more to do with a merged community, but it was very different from what we had come up with.
So what you're paying attention to is how various plans reflect whatever kind of input they get from focus groups or community groups. I'm going to put that under, where should I put that? Paying attention to, I'm just going to add it here. I don't know where it's going to go, but it's unique enough that I just.
And I also saw the separate but share recommendations and thought they actually looked rather good.
Thank you. I am making this a little bit more general. I hope this still represents what the kernel of what you were saying, that you're paying attention to how both boards, the select board take into account and reflect input from focus groups and the community. And that's sort of a perennial paying attention of just wanting to see that respected and taken into account.
So that I think that consideration needs to be given to the separate but share recommendations.
Okay, and that is down here already.
Well, yeah, but you've repeated a lot of things that other people have said, so.
Some I have, and some I've tried to go back and add to and elaborate. So I'm going to just say, to add to this one, take a second look at these recommendations. Might be third, fourth. Probably it's not fair to put a number on it, but for shorthand, and at this minute of the evening, that's probably the best that I can do. Okay, so for closing comments, I just want to talk about next steps, and then we'll adjourn. I will be taking these notes. We'll have one more meeting. It's fully online Friday. It's going to take the same format. So all of you who are here, you're welcome to attend. If I see you or recognize your name in that list, I'm still going to be giving precedence to folks who haven't been able to speak yet for those who weren't here tonight. But essentially, you can assume that it's going to be the same kind of content, and I'm going to be adding to this list, combining them, and then passing them over to the select board by the end of the day on Friday. I don't know when they're going to be able to digest it and look at it, however. Then there will be one more forum 2 weeks from now. I suspect it will have a very similar tone, but there might be different kinds of questions because 2 weeks have passed, and you will have already banked a certain amount of perspective from these two forums. Anything that you want to add, Greg or Evan?
No, just thank you everybody for coming out here tonight, for joining us online. Like Jen said, the next forum is going to be Friday afternoon. It's going to be at noon, entirely online. If you want to find the link to it, it's going to be on Microsoft Teams again. If you go to the town webpage, website, we have a link up there and some information about the forums. The address is www.essexvt.org/public forums, all one word. There's information there. Feel free to email me if you have any questions. And once again, thank you for coming out. We hope to hear from more people on Friday.
Okay, thank you all. Have a good evening.
Have a good night, everybody. Thank you for attending and all your comments.
Grab a water and some cookies on your way out.